Okay, students, this is our Unit 6 Part 2 review covering quizzes 6.09 and 6.10. Information to say for 6.09. We have something called a two-way table. A two-way table basically looks like this. It's where you take some data, some information, and it relates with each other, okay? This is called a Venn diagram. We can take the information from a Venn diagram and put it in a two-way table like we see here. So for example, owns a car and walks to work would be both of these circles together. So you see that that's including the 25, and that's why 25 goes there. Two more definitions. We have something called relative frequency. Relative frequency is the ratio of the value of a subtotal to the value of the total. Okay, so we have a total number of people here, which would mean to add up everybody here, everything that's happening. So 68 plus 92 would give us this column total, okay? And then this column total would be 25 and 3, and then those would make a total, okay? So that would be the total. So you're going to take, for example, the 25 and divide it by this total, and that's the relative frequency. The marginal frequency is finding a column total. So taking these two, adding up, or the rows going the other direction and dividing it by the total. And you're going to see what I mean here in just a second. Okay, so here's an example. I can find relative and marginal frequency. So for example, to find this one right here, what they did is they did male child, 10, and divided by the total number of people, including child and adult, male and female, okay? So they did 10 divided by 40 and got 0.25. So let's go ahead and find female child. So let's go and do 21 divided by 40. And we're just going to leave it as a decimal, although we could say that that was a percent if we changed it to a percent, but let's do 21. And we get 0.5 or 0.525. See if I can write in this little box here and you can see it. 0.525. And then you can continue on doing those. For the total right here, let me put it in yellow. For this total right here, you could do one of two things. You could take the 31 and divide it by 40. Okay. And that will give you the total there. But you could also take the total in each part of the row, so the 25 here, and add the 5.25 here, and that should equal your total as well, okay? So either way, whichever way you want to do it, 0.25 plus 0.525, we'll do it that way, is 0.775. And if you do 31 divided by 40, you're going to get 0.775 as well. Now you could go ahead and calculate these. Just take 3 and divide it by 4, take 6 and divide it by 40, and so forth. Okay, so now let's use these two-way tables and find a probability. So when we find probability using two-way tables, we're going to use the information that we see in that picture to write a fraction and then change it to a percent, okay? So whenever I think of probability, I'm automatically thinking fractions. I know that the total has to go on the bottom. So let's read this one. It says, what is the probability that a randomly selected horse is a gray horse that is in the pasture? Okay, so that's key, randomly selected. Randomly selected means that I'm just going to go and pick one out. I'm not putting a condition on it saying I'm only going to go to the pasture and pick, or I'm only going to pick a brown horse. No, we're randomly selecting from all of them. So my total comes from the table up here where it says total. That's the total of all the horses in the pasture and in the barn. So that becomes my bottom, my denominator. Now to find my numerator, I want a gray horse that is in the pasture. So now I'm going to go to the column that has gray, and I'm going to find the one that's in the pasture. And so that makes 9. That becomes my numerator. And now that I have my denominator and my numerator, I'm going to go ahead and divide those and make it a percent because I want it written as a percent. So 9 divided by 39 gives me 0.2307. And if I move my decimal 2 places to make it a percent, a lot of times it'll say to round to something. This one says round to the nearest whole percent, so we would leave it as 23%, because that 0 is the next number and it's less than 5. So what this is saying is that if you were to randomly just pick a horse, go to the pasture or the barn or whatever, go to this farm and say, I want my chances of getting a gray horse in the pasture. You have 23% chance of that happening. Okay, so it's not likely, but it's not unlikely. It could happen. Okay, but the closer you get to 50%, the better or the higher chances you're going to get, right? So obviously if you're over 50%, then there's more than half of them out there that are in that condition. All right. So now let's try this one. This is a two-way table talking about males and females and left and right-handed. We want to know the probability of a person select them at random. Okay, so once again, we're selected at random, is not a right-handed female. Okay, not a right-handed female. So first of all, we're going to still use our total here. So that's the bottom. And if we think about it, the only ones that are right-handed females are these ones right here, correct? But that's not going to be our numerator. Okay, well, we could do it two ways. We could find that and then do the opposite of it, or we could find everything else and put that as our numerator. So if we're talking about 46 people that are right-handed females, the difference of that is going to be the not. So 121 minus 46 so that would be 75, I believe. Make sure I did my math right. Yep, so 75 students then, or people, whatever this is, 75 people are not a right-handed female. Okay, so that was a little bit tricky because they had that word not in there, okay, and that's why I wanted to show you this one. So we're going to go ahead and find 75 divided by 121 and write it as a percent. Most of your questions asked you to write it as a percent to the nearest tenth. So this one came out as 0.6198, and we'll stop there. And so I'm going to move my decimal 2 places. So this would be 61.98. The problem is this is greater than 5, so it would round the 9 up to a 10, which then would round the 1 up to a 2. So this is really 62%. And that would be your answer. Okay, 610. So we've already talked about marginal frequency. 610 is all about conditional probability. So conditional probability is this idea that we're finding a probability still, but there's some condition put on it. So we see it written like this, and that means the probability of B given A. So now something has happened, and you're only taking part of the information. Okay, so this word given is huge. You will be looking for this word given, and you'll be using that idea. Okay, now here is a formula. You could use this formula if you would like, but I think it's just one more thing you have to memorize. Okay, and so I'm going to show you without using the formula, and you're going to basically just think about it logically, okay, and use the idea that we have this word given, and it's going to create the denominator for our fraction. So let's go ahead and look at what happens. So here's an example. It says a bag contains 6 red marbles, 8 yellow marbles, 10 green, 6 blue, and 5 white. A marble selected at random, find the probability. So first, the probability that the marble is blue, given that it is not green. Okay, so this is key. Whenever you see this word given, the stuff behind it becomes your denominator. Okay, so that's like your new total, because now you're saying you're going to take out the green, and only thing that's left are the red, yellow, blue, and white. So let's go ahead and add those up. So the ones that are not green are 6 red plus 8 yellow, so that's 14, plus 6 more blue, which is 20, plus 5 white, which makes 25. Okay, so my new total because I have that given condition is 25. Then I want to find my numerator. Well, I'm looking for the ones that are blue. It says 6 are blue, so I'm going to go ahead and make that my numerator. Now, just like I did before, I'm going to divide and change it to a percent. So 6 divided by 25, that's 0.24. That's a decimal. If I change it to a percent, then I get 24%. So my chances of that happening, given that I know they're not green, is 24%. Okay, so now let's try the next one. The marble is green, given, so there's that key word, we already can know where our denominator is, that it is not yellow or blue. Okay, so now we're taking out the blues and the yellows. So we have 6 red, 10 green, and 5 white. So if I add those up, I get 21, and that's my denominator. I want to know green, and so I'm going to put 10 on top. I'm going to go ahead and divide, and that's 0.4761. And so if I go ahead and change this to a decimal, I'm going to move to a percent, my decimal 2 places. I'm going to write this as 47.6 because I want to the nearest tenth. That's what most of your quiz questions will say, and I want to make sure you understand that. So I looked at the 1. The 1 is less than 5, so I leave the 6 as a 6. Okay, and that's it. All right, let's look at one with a table now. So here's my table. It says the table shows the number of students who have attended a school musical. Find the probability. A student attend the musical given, there's our given, that he or she is a senior. Okay, so right now I'm going to go to my given and I'm going to circle what it said. So my given says that he or she is a senior. So those are the only numbers I'm working with, guys. That's it. I can ignore the rest of the information on the board. Okay, I do need a total here though. So 224 plus 8 is 232, I believe. So that's my numerator. Okay, that's all the students that are seniors. Now, I mean my denominator. I'm sorry, I'm writing it in the right spot and saying the wrong word. We want a student that attended the musical. So now to find my numerator, I go to the first part of the problem. Attended musical is right here within that senior range. And so we have 224 that did that. So now to find the percent, we just divide and move our decimal. So this is going to be pretty likely that this is going to happen. 0.9655, which means 96.6% attended, or that's the probability of that happening. Oh, I said 6 and then I wrote a 5. Okay, so 96.6%. All right, one more question. Actually, there's 2 more. This one you're going to notice is different because the table has relative frequencies. Okay, so it's dealing with relative frequencies. But we're going to do the same thing. So given that he or she is in art, so I'm going to go straight to art. These are the only numbers I'm working with now. Okay, my total there, though, I need to do a total still. I need to have a marginal total. So 0.26 plus 0.58 is 0.84, so that's my denominator. I'm going to still use the point. Okay, now I want to know in music class, that's my numerator, so the ones that are in music class that are in my circle there are 0.58. And so now I go ahead and divide. So 0.58 divided by 0.84, and I get 0.6904, and then I'm going to move my decimal to change it to a percent. And this is really 69%. Okay, last question. This one is different because you see percents already and we haven't had one like this. So let me read it to you. One member from a book club is randomly selected. There's a 40% chance the member is male, and there's a 15% chance that the member is male and finished reading the last book. We are trying to find the probability that the member did not finish reading the last book given that the member is male. Okay, so this one's kind of tricky. You see the given, but we don't have any other information besides these 40% and 15%. So I know I'm going to have to use those. So this is what I like to do on these questions. I'm going to just find what happens here. So I'm first going to change 15% to a decimal, which is point, oh, that's really bad. I'm sorry. Okay, let me start over. 0.15 is 15% in decimal. That's going to be my numerator. So I always put my smaller number on top when I'm dealing with questions like this, and it already has the percent, because if I don't, it's going to be more than 100%, and that's not what I'm looking for, okay? So I'm going to start here, okay? You got to start somewhere. So let's take 0.15 and divide it by 0.4. So that's equal to 0.375, which is really 37.5%. Okay, so now what did we just find? Because that's not our answer. Let me tell you what we just found. We found that this is a member that finished the book given they were a male. So we want a member that did not finish the book, okay? Well, if you think about it, these are always out of 100%. So if I take my 100% and subtract what I found here, because those are the ones that did, so the other ones have to be the ones that did not, I should have my answer. So I'm going to do 100 minus 37.5, and I get 62.5, and so that means 62.5% did not. And that, my friends, is the answer. Okay, if you have questions, you'll need to contact your math teacher. Thanks for listening and watching.